A young woman disappears from Cleveland without warning. Weeks pass. Her phone goes silent. Her family hears nothing. There is no message saying she needs space, no call explaining where she has gone, and no clear sign that she intends to return. Then, more than 100 miles away, a neighbor notices something unusual outside a house in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. A surveillance camera captures suspicious movement. Police are called. Investigators enter the backyard. Beneath layers of wet and hardened concrete, they make a horrifying discovery. The missing woman is 23-year-old Adrianna Taylor. She has been shot in the head. And the man police believe transported her from Ohio and tried to hide her beneath concrete is not a stranger. He is the 43-year-old man with whom she had been living, Anthony Kennedy. But the most disturbing part of this case may not be where Adriana was found. It may be the warning signs that existed before she vanished, the control her relatives later described, and the possibility that without one observant neighbor, the truth might have remained buried. This is the tragic story of Adrianna Taylor, a young life cut short, a multi-state investigation, and a secret that concrete could not conceal. Before we begin, remember that this case involves domestic violence and homicide. Adrianna Taylor was more than the victim in a criminal file. She was a daughter, a niece, a cousin, and a young woman whose family spent weeks hoping she would return home. In 2022, Adriana was living in Cleveland, Ohio. She shared a home on West 98th Street with Anthony Kennedy, a man approximately 20 years older than her. From the outside, people may have seen two adults building a life together. But private relationships can be very different from their public appearance. What looks like support can become dependency. What looks like protection can become surveillance. And what begins as affection can slowly turn into control. According to one of Adriana's relatives, Kennedy had also been her supervisor at work. The relative said he paid certain expenses, including her car and phone bills, and described him as having extensive control over her daily life. But when one person controls employment, transportation, communication, housing, or money, leaving can become increasingly difficult. The person being controlled may have fewer private conversations, fewer independent resources, and fewer safe ways to ask for help. Then, in early October 2022, Adriana stopped communicating with her family.
What are they doing to her? Is she crying out for help? You know what I'm saying? It's emotional. It's just so overwhelming.
Had a good attitude, was really funny, just made the best of it.
That's what I was going through. Like, where is she? What are they doing to her? I hope she's not hurt. I was praying that we found her alive. I was praying.
Just a good, like a best friend, you know, but also my cousin. And I'm just hurt because I just never would have thought that this would happen, because she didn't deserve.
Anyone knows anything, report it to the police.
Her relatives said the last time they heard from her was October 8th. At first, silence can be explained away. A phone may be broken. A person may be busy. Families often hesitate before assuming the worst because they desperately want an ordinary explanation. But as the days passed, Adriana remained silent. No reassuring call came. No message arrived. No one could confirm that she was safe. By November 13th, more than a month after her family last heard from her, Adriana was officially reported missing to Cleveland police. The disappearance created an immediate and troubling question. How could a 23-year-old woman vanish while living with someone, yet leave so little reliable information about where she had gone? Investigators began looking at the people, places, and vehicles connected to Adriana. Their attention eventually moved beyond Cleveland and toward western Pennsylvania, roughly 140 miles away. Kennedy had ties to the Pittsburgh area. According to the arrest warrant, his sister either lived or had recently lived at a house on Hill Avenue in Wilkinsburg, a community just outside Pittsburgh. That address would become the center of the case. But police did not arrive there because someone discovered a body in plain sight. They arrived because a neighbor paid attention. A nearby Ring doorbell camera had captured activity outside the property that appeared suspicious. The neighbor did not dismiss it as none of their business. The footage was brought to the attention of law enforcement. That decision changed everything. On Thanksgiving night, November 24th, 2022, investigators descended on the Hill Avenue home. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood later showed officers arriving at approximately 8:45 in the evening. For hours, law enforcement personnel moved in and out of the property and worked around the house. Their focus was the backyard. There, beneath wet and dry concrete, investigators found concealed bags. Adriana's remains were reportedly inside a tote bag that had been placed within a larger construction bag. The effort to hide her had been deliberate. Concrete had been placed over the location, creating the appearance of construction or repair. But the material that was meant to conceal the crime instead became evidence of an attempt to make Adriana disappear. The Allegheny County medical examiner determined that Adriana had died from a gunshot wound to the head. Her death was ruled a homicide. For the family that had waited through weeks of uncertainty, the discovery ended the hope that she might still walk through the door. The missing person investigation was now a murder investigation, and it stretched across state lines. Authorities believed the killing had occurred in Cleveland, while Adriana's body was discovered in Pennsylvania. Her vehicle was also located in Pennsylvania and transported back to Cleveland so investigators could process it for evidence. That movement mattered. Detectives had to reconstruct a journey from the Cleveland home Adriana shared with Kennedy, across state lines, to the backyard connected to his family. Investigators also alleged that Kennedy had recently been seen in the rear of the Hill Avenue property. Reports stated that a man had been captured moving to and from the backyard, and sources said Kennedy returned to the location on the same night Adriana was discovered. Once Adriana was identified and her death ruled a homicide, investigators focused publicly on Anthony Kennedy. On November 25th, a warrant was issued for his arrest on an aggravated murder charge. The search widened. Cleveland police and federal authorities looked for him, while Crime Stoppers offered a reward for information that could lead to his arrest. For several days, Kennedy's location was uncertain. Then, on November 30th, accompanied by an attorney, he surrendered to the Allegheny County Police Department in Pennsylvania. He did not answer reporters' questions as he entered custody. The surrender ended the manhunt, but it did not answer the central question. Why was Adriana killed? Public reporting at the time said investigators had not released a clear motive. That uncertainty is important. In true crime stories, there is a temptation to fill every blank with speculation. But the known facts are disturbing enough. A young woman disappeared. Her body was moved across state lines. She was placed inside multiple bags. She was buried beneath concrete behind a house associated with the accused man's family. And her car was found in Pennsylvania. As detectives built the criminal case, another troubling part of Kennedy's history became public. Court records showed that in 2019, years before Adriana's death, Kennedy had been arrested in a domestic violence incident involving a different girlfriend. Police alleged that he climbed into the woman's vehicle and strangled her with both hands, preventing her from breathing or calling for help. They also alleged that he pressed his forearm against her throat and pulled her hair. That prior allegation did not prove what happened to Adriana. It involved another woman and a separate case. But it revealed that authorities had previously documented accusations of serious violence in an intimate relationship. It was a warning sign written into the public record. Strangulation is especially alarming in domestic abuse cases. Because it is not merely an assault on the body, it demonstrates an ability to control whether another person can breathe. Even when a victim survives, the act can communicate a terrifying message: your life is in my hands. The existence of Kennedy's prior domestic violence case raised painful questions after Adriana's death. Did anyone around her see signs of fear? Did she feel free to leave? Did the age difference, work relationship, shared home, and financial dependence create an imbalance that isolated her? Could intervention have changed the outcome? There may never be complete answers. It is also important not to blame Adriana for remaining in the relationship. People often ask why someone did not leave, but that question can misunderstand how coercive relationships operate. Leaving may mean losing a home, a job, a car, a phone, financial security, or personal safety. A controlling partner may monitor communication, threaten retaliation, apologize after violence, or convince the victim that no one else will help. The more useful question is not, why didn't she leave? It is, what made leaving unsafe, difficult, or impossible? And what could the people around her have done to support her? In December 2022, a Cuyahoga County grand jury indicted Kennedy on 13 felony counts. The charges included aggravated murder, felonious assault, aggravated robbery, theft-related offenses, tampering with evidence, and an offense against a human corpse. At his January 2023 arraignment, he initially pleaded not guilty. Bond was set at $1 million. For Adriana's family, the court process meant confronting the details of what had happened while grieving a young woman they had spent weeks trying to find. Cases like this are often reduced to dramatic phrases: body under concrete, interstate murder, secret backyard grave. Those descriptions attract attention, but they can also push the victim into the background. Adriana should not be remembered only for the place where she was found. She was 23 years old. She had relationships, plans, routines, preferences, memories, and people who expected to share a future with her. Her death did not simply end one life. It changed the lives of everyone who loved her. In June 2023, the case reached its legal conclusion without a trial. Kennedy pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, tampering with evidence, and an offense against a human corpse. By pleading guilty, he removed the need for prosecutors to prove those charges to a jury. The court then sentenced him to life in prison, with his first opportunity for parole after serving 20 years. The sentence brought accountability, but accountability is not restoration. It cannot return the weeks Adriana's family spent searching. It cannot erase the knowledge of how she died. It cannot transform the backyard in Wilkinsburg back into an ordinary place. And it cannot give Adriana the decades of life she should have had. The neighbor's role remains one of the most important elements of this story. Many crimes are solved through forensic testing, witness interviews, phone records, or confessions. In this case, a common home surveillance camera and a person willing to report suspicious behavior helped lead investigators to the truth. The neighbor did not need to solve the case. The neighbor only needed to notice, preserve what had been recorded, and speak. That is an important lesson. People should not place themselves in danger or confront someone they suspect may be violent. But unusual activity around a vulnerable person, a suspicious attempt to conceal something, or information connected to a missing person investigation should not automatically be ignored. One careful decision can become the first link in a chain of accountability. There is another lesson here, and it begins long before the concrete. Warning signs in relationships are often easier to recognize after tragedy. Extreme jealousy may be mistaken for love. Constant calls may be seen as concern. Financial control may look like generosity. Isolation may appear to be privacy. A large power imbalance may be dismissed because both people are adults. But patterns matter. Does one partner control where the other goes? Do they monitor a phone, money, clothing, friendships, or work? Do they threaten self-harm or violence when the other person tries to leave? Do they have access to weapons? Have they choked, strangled, restrained, stalked, or terrorized a previous partner? Does the victim seem to be withdrawing from family? One sign alone may have an innocent explanation. Several signs together may reveal escalating danger. Friends and relatives may be afraid of saying the wrong thing. A direct demand to leave can sometimes cause a victim to pull away, particularly if the controlling partner has already isolated them. Adriana's story also demonstrates why missing person reports must be taken seriously, especially when someone suddenly stops communicating and there are concerns about an intimate partner. But an unexplained disappearance becomes more concerning when it conflicts with normal behavior, when belongings or vehicles appear in unusual locations, or when a partner gives inconsistent information. Time matters. Digital records can be deleted. Vehicles can be cleaned. Evidence can be moved. Concrete can harden. In this case, weeks separated Adriana's last known contact with her family from the discovery of her body. Yet evidence survived. A camera had recorded suspicious movement. A vehicle was recovered. A burial site was located. Investigators connected a Cleveland disappearance to a Pennsylvania backyard. The attempt to conceal Adriana ultimately failed. The distance did not erase the connection. The bags did not prevent identification. The concrete did not keep investigators out. And silence did not last forever. Anthony Kennedy is now serving a life sentence. The legal record establishes his guilty plea. The investigation established where Adriana was found and how she died, but the emotional truth of the case belongs to her family. They lost a young woman they described with love. They were forced to learn that the person who should have cared for her had become responsible for her death. They had to grieve publicly while the most painful details of Adriana's final days became headlines. So, when we remember this case, we should not begin and end with the killer. We should remember Adrianna Taylor. We should remember the family that refused to stop looking. We should remember the neighbor who did not ignore suspicious activity. And we should remember that domestic violence often grows in private, behind ordinary doors, inside relationships that may look stable from the outside. The most dangerous warning signs are not always bruises that everyone can see. Sometimes they are control, disguised as care, dependence presented as protection, fear mistaken for loyalty, and silence interpreted as distance. Adriana was last heard from on October 8, 2022. She was reported missing on November 13th. She was found on Thanksgiving night beneath concrete in a backyard more than 100 miles from home. 6 days later, Kennedy surrendered. The following June, he admitted guilt and was sentenced to life. A crime designed to hide a young woman instead exposed a chain of violence, control, concealment, and loss. And it happened because one person looked at something unusual and decided it mattered. Concrete can cover evidence. Distance can delay discovery. Silence can create doubt. But none of them can guarantee that the truth will remain buried. For Adrianna Taylor, the truth came too late to save her. But it came in time to name what happened, hold her killer responsible, and leave the rest of us with a question we should never ignore. When the warning signs appear, will we recognize them before another life disappears?